Good evening and welcome to episode 39 of the Jacksonian. I am yours truly, Jackson Johnson, and I have with me is the host of the Boston Bally podcast and Locked On Red Sox, the one and only herself, Gabby Hurlbut, as we will be going over the 20th anniversary of the monumental 2004 Red Sox team that won it all, ended the drought, slayed the dragon, if you will, the 2024 Red Sox season, our take on the latest on the Boston Celtics, and what's going to be like for the New England Patriots in their first season without Bill Belichick as head coach. And let me tell you something, folks, it's going to be a wild ride. How you doing today, Gabby?
I am doing fantastic today. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing very fantastic myself. I'm just staying out of this heat, but I'm just trying to stay warm in a way, just because I always got those lawn sleeves.
Yeah, it's been hot up here too, for sure. And, in New England, it doesn't always get crazy hot in the summer, but it's definitely been very humid this year. So it's made it feel a lot hotter than it is. So it gets to be a little uncomfortable. But I always say the winters here are way worse than the summer. So if I have to choose one or the other, I would much prefer this.
There you go. And that's the way the news goes. And for those who don't know about Locked On Red Sox or Boss Spot, like tell the audience a little bit about yourself, Gabby.
Yeah, for sure. So, I have been in podcasting since 2020, which is kind of crazy to think about. I started Boston Balling during the pandemic when I had gotten asked to be a guest on somebody else's podcast, and I really enjoyed that conversation. And then I kind of wanted my own platform to be able to talk about Boston sports because I was like, I could talk about Boston sports all day, every day. So why not find a platform to do that on? So I started Boston Balling and I started bringing different guests on that are affiliated in some way with Boston sports. So like, media people, reporters, or people who cover the team, as well as some former athletes and just a mix of a lot of different people. And I was able to develop my own following on it within the Boston sports community because I was covering all the different teams and all the big stuff that was happening with them, and just kind of dropped episodes once a week and continued to grind and work hard and kind of continue to build it up. And then Locked On is a podcast network that has a show for every major sports team. They're one of the biggest podcast networks across really the world because they just cover so many different sports and so many different teams. And they had two Red Sox hosts who happened to leave the network at the same time, and they were looking for somebody to replace them. And they were really impressed by the fact that I had built up my own following and really understood, what it meant to be on that grind of promoting a podcast because I was constantly using social media to promote Boston Balling. So they ended up hiring me to do Locked On Red Sox. So Locked On Red Sox is a daily Monday through Friday show that I just talk about everything Red Sox. And it's been a great experience being with them. And Boston Balling is a weekly show that I still do as my own thing, where I bring on different guests within the Boston sports community to give me a way to talk about the other teams. So it's definitely been great to still be able to talk about all the Boston teams. But baseball truly is my favorite sport and always has been. So talking about the Red Sox every day is something that would never get old.
Well, it's definitely a ballroom blitz on the Boston Balling podcast and the Locked On Red Sox podcast for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It is a great time. And I think, too, I always say to people, I've grown up in a great time of being a Boston sports fan. We've just been so lucky in terms of seeing a lot of success in the 2000s with quite a few of these teams. And I think, it's really starting to sink in that the Celtics hadn't won in so long. And we finally just got to see them win a championship again, right as we're probably dealing with a long rebuild for the Patriots. And, there's definitely different things that I look back on that I'm grateful for from the 2000s, because I see some other sports fans who are just really suffering because they just have not been able to have that same type of experience as I have. So it's been super fun covering these teams in this era that I've been able to cover them in.
Well, I will say over here in Bama, we may have to borrow some of that Boston magic, like at least for the Titans and the Braves.
Maybe some of it, but we can't give up all of it because we still want to keep winning. So
Well, it won't be all of it, I can assure you. But speaking of magic, 2004 happened, and before then, the Red Sox were known as this team that was just not doing so hot in the postseason. They were like the MLB equivalent of the Vikings and the Bills, so to speak.
yes, yes,
They could
it's a
they
good
couldn't get it
comparison.
done. They couldn't get it done in the Ted Williams era. They couldn't get it done in 1967. Carlton Fisk bought him some time in game 6, but not enough in game 7.
Yep.
And game 6 of the 86 World Series, disastrous. But personally for me, I kind of think everybody kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater on Bill Buckner. It's like, Bill Buckner didn't blow the game. Good grief. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater on the first baseman. He didn't pitch. Good grief.
Yeah, he got all the heat when people have to remember at the end of the day, like, yeah, that's a play that should have been made, but there were so many more things about that game that went wrong for the Red Sox. And we as fans just hate to relive that experience. And you're right. It was just, it's a good comparison comparing it to teams that haven't been able to see success and have not been able to finish the job and get over that hump. And for Red Sox fans who had grown up during that time, had never seen their team win a championship. And that's what made 2004, when it got there, as special as it was, because these Red Sox fans were used to heartbreak and situations like 1986 and seeing this team come so close, but not being able to finish it.
And you saw more heartbreak in the 2003 ALCS,
Yep.
and it
Yeah.
looked like you're going to see some more heartbreak after the Yankees gave you a spanking in game 3. Looks like you're going to get spanked in game 4, right? Well, somebody forgot to tell the Red Sox that, because David Ortiz hit a game winner, and we'll see it tonight, as Joe Butt put it. Red Sox won in game 5. Then we see the bloody sock from Kurt Schilling, game 6. Bam! Winner right there. Game 7. Red Sox complete something that no team in sports history has ever done. Make a comeback from 3 games to none and win the series. And the momentum carried on over against the Cardinals and thus ended an 86-year drought.
Yeah,
How
and you
did it
know what
feel
made
then
that
when you
even
saw it?
sweeter really was just the fact that it was against the Yankees too. Just with how much hate we as a fan base have for the Yankees, it just made it that much sweeter for that type of comeback to be made against that team, the same team who, like you had just mentioned, knocked the Red Sox out in 2003, and everybody was counting the Red Sox out after game 3.
Yeah, because like you can't be counting anybody out after one game. That's just bad. I know,
Oh
I
yeah.
know, I know that like teams can be down after 3 games to none. It's easy to do that, but it's not quite as easy to do that anymore, as we saw in the 2020 ALCS, the 2023 Eastern Conference Finals with the Celtics Heat, and in the Stanley Cup Finals. I'm kind of a moron about hockey, but I do my best to watch a little bit of it.
Yeah, I mean, it goes to show like the Red Sox doing what they did that year set the precedent that it's not over until it's truly over. And, Kevin Millar had the famous quote of "Don't let us win today" before game 4. And then sure enough, they just kept winning and winning and winning. And it's funny because with this being the 20th anniversary year of the 2004 season, I have been dropping episodes once a week of Locked On Red Sox that just looks back on the 2004 team and just how special that team really was. And I think it really was that makeup of guys. They were just so hungry and wanting to win, and they were absolutely stacked talent wise. And so much came together at the right time for them because they just got all the momentum when they needed to. Because once they won game 4, they just kept winning. I mean, sweeping the Cardinals in the World Series, and there was just no stopping that Red Sox team. And I think it goes to show, teams now have that mentality of, one game at a time. And like you just mentioned, the most recent one being the Stanley Cup Finals is, I thought the Oilers were completely done after the first 3 games, and then they forced a game 7 and they weren't obviously able to win it in 7 games. But for them still to come back and win 3 straight and force a game 7, it really does go to show that it's not over till it's really over. And if you as a team take the feet off the gas too soon, then that's going to hurt you in the end.
I gotta write that line down. Take the feet off the gas too soon. So I'm gonna remember that.
Make sure I'm trademarking it though.
There we go. A Gabby Hurlbut quote.
Exactly.
There we go. But now we got the 2024 season for the Red Sox. And I think they're down by a game and a half in the wild card. So we look at the rest schedule. We know they're going to be playing the Marlins this week. And well, speak of the devil, they got the Yankees.
Yep.
Can we see the Red Sox make a little comeback, get that second wild card spot?
Absolutely. I think, the question with this Red Sox team early on in the season was, what are they? What is their identity going to be? Because heading into the season, there were a lot of question marks surrounding this roster because they didn't do a whole lot to address a ton of needs super aggressively. And the expectation from fans was that the front office was going to do a lot more to address this roster than they did, especially from a pitching standpoint. But their pitching staff has been one of the biggest surprises in the best way possible for this team this year. And I definitely credit Andrew Bailey for that, who they brought in this offseason to work with the pitching staff and really hone in on what's the strengths of some of these guys, what are their weaknesses. I actually got to speak to him at Red Sox winter weekend, and he basically told me a little bit about the approach of the pitching staff this year and just really personalizing each pitcher's experience and catering to their strengths. And I think it's really paid dividends for them this year. And we're starting to see more things come together as of the last few weeks. I mean, they had a rough May where their pitching staff was still holding things together, but they couldn't hit, or they were playing really poor defense. And there were just a lot of other issues coming up. They've also been absolutely plagued with injuries this year, which is another big thing to keep in mind with this team, is they aren't fully healthy yet, but they're going to start getting some guys back pretty soon that could be key pieces for this team. The momentum really started for them when they won a series against the Phillies and then a series against the Yankees back to back, who at the time were the two best teams in baseball. And so I think that really sparked some momentum for this Red Sox team to show that they are capable of beating the more competitive teams. They had a rough series against the Padres over the weekend, but hopefully they can get back on track against a Marlins team that has been struggling this year. And hopefully it leads to them continuing to play good baseball. They've shown that they are capable, and I absolutely think I could see them landing a playoff spot. And if they do, then the biggest part of the team to thank for that is the starting pitching and how good they've been this year, because that was something that definitely was unexpected that we wouldn't have seen coming early on. But they definitely are set up to be in a good spot to get a spot. And like I have said to people before, you just have to get in. You never know what's going to happen in the postseason. Last year's Diamondbacks specifically can tell you that. You just have to get in, and then anything can happen. And I think the Red Sox are showcasing and putting on display right now a lot of the young talent that they have, that they as an organization have been trying to develop, who are going to be key pieces for the future. Some of those guys are really coming along this year, and they definitely are establishing what that core is going to be. So they have the talent. It's just going to require them adding a couple pieces at the trade deadline and getting their guys back healthy.
Well, and I noticed that a lot of one seeds just kind of fell off the wagon last year. And, anybody that says, oh, they're the one seed, they're going to win it all. It's like, yeah, you're throwing the cart in before the horse. You just don't do that.
No, you really don't know. And I mean, again, the Dodgers are a good example of this, a team that a lot of times are a favorite to go all the way. They win 100 plus games basically every year with the roster that they have, and they should be going all the way. But even once again, going into this year, I'm not sitting here saying I'm putting my money on the Dodgers to win it all because I just don't trust them because they consistently find a way to choke in the playoffs. And that's why they play the games. And you really never know. And baseball is so crazy when it comes to the postseason. It really is the team that has the momentum at the right time that could go and win it all. And I mean, I don't think many of us would have expected the Diamondbacks to go to the World Series last year. And that just goes to show that's why you have to play the games and, have everybody come together at the right time. So I still think it's, kind of wide open right now. I think there's a lot of competitive teams in the American League, but the Red Sox are right in the mix right now. So they are set up to get a spot. They just need to keep playing the level of baseball they've been playing over the last few weeks because that's a team that can be really competitive.
Well, you just mentioned about the Red Sox, about how they're gonna get some of their guys back at the right time, and I noticed that the Twins are on their schedule still, and the Rangers, the defending champion Rangers, I still can't believe I'm saying that. That's amazing in of itself.
I know. I mean, the Rangers have been disappointing this year for sure. I think there was a lot of expectations on them going into this year since they won the World Series a season ago. But relative to them last year and what they looked like in that whole championship run, they certainly have not looked the same overall this year. The Red Sox struggled against the Twins early on this year. So that's going to be an important series for them, too, is can they win that series and come away with, hopefully grabbing two of those games because the Twins are close to them in the wild card standings as well. That's another team that could still make a wild card run later on. So that's going to be a key series for the Red Sox. They have to beat those teams that are closer to them in the standings right now. So hopefully they're able to grab that series against the Twins because they struggled against them the last time they played.
Well, and something I noticed is the Twins always struggle in the big moments, and the
Yes.
last time they've had a World Series was time I wasn't even a thought in 1991. I wasn't even born in that time.
Me either. Yeah, I know. They are another consistent choker year after year after year. So they're another team that you can't really trust when it comes to locking in the big moments and getting it done. And that's why you can't really count anybody out in baseball. Once they're in, they have just as much of a shot as anybody. And I think what it's going to come down to in these next few months, as we're already 3 months into the season with 3 months of the regular season left to go, when I reflect on the Red Sox first half and think about the second half, guys are really starting to find their place on this team and where they belong. And Alex Cora has been great with managing some of their strengths that they have on the roster. Like they have exceptional speed on the roster with three very fast guys who are there right now that can bounce around from base to base and put pressure on opposing pitchers. So I think when you take all of that into account, Alex Cora deserves a ton of flowers for the way he's managed this team this year with all the injuries, but also these guys are really starting to find their identity overall as a team. And I think that's what's really important when it gets closer and closer to playoff time.
Well, it's gonna be fun seeing what happens with the playoff race, but I bet ESPN's all broken up about the fact that the Dodgers come up short. It's like,
Oh yeah, every year they hate that because I mean, especially with, their payroll right now, there is so much pressure on them to win a World Series with how much money they spent this offseason. That would be very bad for them if they don't at least come out of the NL and go to the World Series. So there's just so much pressure on them. And yes, ESPN loves the Dodgers narrative. So they're going to have to do something big in the postseason in order for them to stick to those storylines.
well, I hope the Braves beat them in the postseason this year. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. The Braves are a very good team again this year too, which was to be expected. And I hope you guys are enjoying Chris Sale because we definitely do miss him a little bit. I think it's hard to not appreciate what he did in Boston and just how good he really was during that 2018 run. And that team in general was just so good. But that was prime Chris Sale, and we're always going to appreciate that. And I think, with the Red Sox focusing more on looking towards their future, being able to get a young, talented player in Vaughn Grissom has been nice. I mean, he's been injured and has not been able to play a lot this year, which is unfortunate because I think there's so much potential there. But I know the Braves had trouble parting ways with him. I mean, he was a top prospect in their system, but unfortunately, there's just so much of an overload of talent that the Braves have right now that there just wasn't really a spot for him. So I think the trade ultimately worked out for both teams because Chris Sale is somebody who could help the Braves be in a position to win now. And Vaughn Grisham, somebody who could continue to develop and hopefully be a star for the Red Sox down the road.
A win for everybody. It's kind of like that scene on The Irishman where they're trying to agree on, you're 15 minutes late, you're 10 minutes late. I'd say 12 and a half. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Happy medium.
That's the way the news goes. But speaking of teams that have been very happy, but then we don't know what's gonna happen next. The Boston Celtics have won their 18th title in franchise history in the 2020
Finally.
season. How does it feel?
Amazing. And I have to say, I was at the parade for that. And what a showing. There were millions of people that showed up for that parade. And that just goes to show how awesome the Boston fan base truly is. I mean, people show up for their teams, and it was just such a cool experience to be there and be able to experience that. And I think what made it extra special was how often they were coming up short. I mean, 2021 losing in the finals to the Warriors definitely hurt. And even last year with, the way that they lost and going down 3-0 against the Heat and then falling short in that series and having to listen to the constant narratives from the media of Tatum and Brown are not capable of winning together. And that was the biggest thing that there was pressure on the Celtics to change this year was they can win together. And it was a matter of getting the right combination of players around them. And all regular season, they were the best team in basketball. They were winning so many games. I mean, they won 64 games in the regular season. I mean, that's no joke. And clinching the overall 1 seed, before the season even was close to even ending. And so that was really cool for them. And I knew going into the playoffs, this has to be the year based on the regular season they had. They have all the pressure in the world to win right now, or else the criticism is going to be heavy. And with Tatum having been due at the time for the Supermax contract, if they didn't win this year, I don't know whether the Celtics would have wanted to commit to all that money on the table for Tatum and Brown if they were to fall short once again, because they still wouldn't have proven that they could win together. So it was a huge season for the Celtics for a lot of reasons. I think, bringing in Porzingis and Jrue Holiday really helped to mold this team into what it is. Holiday was such a difference maker for them. He was definitely an upgrade over Marcus Smart because not only was he a great defender, but he also could contribute a lot on the offensive side of the ball, which was something that Marcus Smart lacked a little bit of when he was here. And Derek White, another game changer who they just extended as well. I think there were a lot of guys on this team who stepped up. And the biggest concern for me going into this year was what was the bench going to look like? Because, they had lost Malcolm Brogdon, who had been the 6th man of the year before, and they were losing some bench depth. But then they had guys like Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard who really stepped up off the bench. And not to mention Al Horford, who would alternate with Porzingis on back-to-backs, was also somebody who was massive in this run. And Horford, I mean, I'm so happy for him. He's somebody who I just was like deserves a ring. There are not many other players in the league who deserve to win a championship more than Al Horford right now. And he loves Boston. And I'm so hyped that he's coming back and didn't decide to retire. But there was something really special about these guys. And every time that people doubted them, they just kept winning and winning and winning. And, it kind of just spoke to the dominance that they had all season long. And even in the finals, I mean, that Mavs team wasn't even close to being able to compete with the Celtics. I mean, it was just very clear how much better of a team the Celtics were. And it's serving as a wake-up call to everybody else, I feel like, especially other teams in the Eastern Conference, because the Celtics have now set the precedent for what a winning roster should look like. And now other teams in the East that want to be in contention, like the Knicks, the Pacers, the Bucks, the Sixers, are going to try to make moves to put their roster at the same level as the Celtics. While meanwhile, Brad Stevens is saying, I want to keep as many of these pieces on this roster together as we can. So that's been the focus of what the Celtics have been doing over the last couple days, is really focusing on locking down extensions with these guys. And so far they've been doing that. They've extended a few players already. And so I think, it's very exciting to see this all happening and to see the Celtics finally have achieved something that they had come so close to achieving over the last few seasons and just couldn't get over that hump in the postseason. And I think another big thing this year, too, was the experience all around. I mean, Jrue Holiday is somebody who had been there before, knows what it's like to win a championship. So having him alongside Tatum and Brown was huge, I feel like, this year. And Joe Mazzulla, from a coaching standpoint, I think came a long way from year one to year two, having had that postseason exposure last year and having a more experienced coaching staff around him this year, I think made a big difference in the way he was able to coach this team to a championship this year. And Tatum and Brown just continuing to blossom into the superstar players that they really are. And nobody deserved MVP more than Jalen. I think he had a fantastic series and he just made such a difference in the whole playoffs. And it was a really good look for him and the Celtics that he signed that Supermax extension last summer. And we had to listen to people say he's not worth the money. For him to then go and win finals MVP, I think was just a great way for him to end that season after all of those talks. So it really is an amazing feeling. The Celtics for sure will be back next year. There will be other good teams, and I think other teams in the East are going to make aggressive moves to put themselves at that same level. But the fact that they're able to try to retain most of these players from the championship team, to me, is the biggest reason why I would feel good about them going into next year.
I'll be honest, I'm going to get a huge laugh when Kevin Durant goes, hey, I want to be on the Boston Celtics team. Celtics goes, nope, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'll pass on that. I was one of those people who was so adamant when, there were all those talks about the Celtics trading Jalen Brown for Kevin Durant. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, please no. Like, he is a walking red flag. Like, he's somebody who just causes issues with teams that he's on. And I just don't think it's really worth.
He'll throw you out like a banana peel in the trash.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, it's like, we saw his experience with Brooklyn. Like, how did that go for them? Like, I just was so adamant about not getting him. And I said, Jalen Brown is a cornerstone piece of this team who is still young. So he's still in his prime right now. And he's somebody you want to build a team around. Like, I'm not seeing Kevin Durant mesh with what the Celtics are trying to do. So it'd be really funny if they're like, yeah, no, thank you. Go find somewhere else.
Yeah, that ended well for the Nets and the Suns. They're like, oh, we're gonna have that Golden State match. Yeah,
no. So much for that. Yeah, the Nets, that was just such a complete disaster. And I mean, the Nets franchise is just so funny still to think about because Tatum and Brown, I mean, they were supposed to be the Nets picks. And so just looking back on it at the end of the day, the Nets have accomplished nothing.
You traded for like 2 late 30-year-old guys because you're like, oh, I saw their highlights for the 08 NBA Finals. Oh my God, they were amazing together. They're going to bring that magic. It's like, we're going to beat some. Yeah, you're going to beat them for 1 year, but you're not going to beat them for 5 years. You traded all your picks.
I know, all of them. I know,
and
they just have given up so much of their young future over the last few years, like when they were trying to get, KD and Kyrie together. And then they, attempted to just form this big three and it just didn't really work out for them. And now they're in a spot where they're just in a tough situation because they've given up so much, over the last decade or so that they're just like, what are we supposed to do now?
It's hard for me not to laugh.
It is funny. It is really funny.
You're making all these bad investments, and oh man, I can't wait for the Nets urinating tree video to come out about the Nets, where he just brings up the state of the Nets.
That would be. I would pay to see that.
Oh man, like I just don't know what song he'll use. I don't know if he's gonna use the Derp song. Well, he may just have to use the Derp song on the Nets. It works well for the Giants. I mean, it might as well work well for the Brooklyn Nets.
I know, right? They might as well just like translate it over to that because that could work well.
Well, Oh
They
man,
are a joke.
they are. Oh man. Okay, so the 2024 NBA draft resulted in getting Baylor Shireman from I believe it's from Creighton, right?
Yes.
And we got Anton Watson from Gonzaga. How are the Celtics feeling about those two picks?
Yeah, I think Brad Stevens did a solid job. Me as a Uconn fan, uh, did not like Shireman at all when he was playing at Creighton because Uconn and Creighton hate each other as just, conference rivals and all that. So I got to watch a lot of him, unfortunately. And he is a phenomenal shooter, and he just has a great playmaking ability that I think will fit in really well with what the Celtics are trying to accomplish right now. I think, it'll be interesting to see really where they put him, because Sam Hauser, is somebody who his future is questionable with the Celtics team right now. And I think, they were trying to anticipate the possibility of him eventually not being here. So then they would, place Shireman into his role on the team. I was having mixed feelings with my own emotions on the situation because I was like, I spent so much time hating this guy because he went to Creighton and now I have to root for him because he plays for the Boston Celtics. I think this was a great move for the team. It's always hard to know with the draft who's going to pan out in the NBA and who's not. But I think, both of these draft picks to me screamed depth moves that the Celtics were looking for because they kind of have their core together right now that they kind of see for the foreseeable future being the glue to the team that they're going to keep together. And I think when it comes to these draft picks, these are guys who they see some upside in that they think could bring some value to the table down the road. But I don't really see them being guys who make an immediate impact with this team because they don't necessarily need that. But I think when it comes to the picks, I was surprised, first of all, that he even made the picks because especially the first round pick, because Brad Stevens is known for trading out of first round picks. So I wasn't sure he was even going to make that pick, but they must have liked Shireman enough to make the pick. And then that pick in the second round was somebody who, that was a time where I thought maybe they were going to target a center in the draft, and they didn't really do that, but they must feel like they have a good enough of a security blanket right now, which is playing a bit of a dangerous game because of the fact that Porzingis isn't always healthy. So hopefully their contingency plan there is good. But at the end of the day, these moves both were depth moves, both great offensive players, and I think, eventually could bring some value to this Celtics team down the road. I'm just excited to see them, get some action during summer league and kind of see what they can do then.
Well, it'll be fun to see what happens going into the summer league and the 2024-2025 season.
Oh yeah, I know. It'll come quickly too. I feel like the off season is so short for basketball that before we know it, it's October and the season is starting already. So it'll definitely go by fast. And especially coming off of a championship season, I'm like, I miss these guys. Like I want to see them play again.
Well, speaking of UConn, they had some magic in repeating in all of college basketball as national champs with Dan Hurley as head coach. And it looked like the Lakers going to take him for a moment. But from what I heard, somebody was trying to tell him, hey, if you're going to be head coach Lakers, we're getting Bronny James. Like, no, that's not how it works. Sorry. Never mind. Honey, we're going back to UConn.
No, I think, at the end of the day, I mean, they are New England based people. I mean,
Right.
he originally is from Jersey, and I think his wife likes being in Connecticut. And I don't think she was ready to make a move to the West Coast like that. That's a big move. And I think she made, this decision very heavily. I think she had a big influence in what he was going to end up doing. And at the end of the day, too, he has a chance to do something that hasn't happened since the 70s, which is three-peat. And he has developed such a fantastic program at UConn that it's hard to walk away from that. And honestly, is it really a desirable job to go to LA and have LeBron dictating everything that you're doing? Like, that just doesn't sound like it would be desirable for him to leave UConn and go to a program in which, like, everything's about LeBron and what he wants. And, I was worried for a second that there was a chance that he would go, because I know going to the NBA has been a goal of his for a while. So I was worried that, the Lakers would offer him a boatload of money and he would go, but he, decided to turn down the money and stay at UConn, which really goes to show the type of person he is and the loyalty he has towards continuing to build this UConn program that he's built over the last few years. And with how good of a coach he is at the college level, there will be other opportunities down the road for him in the NBA. And if he finds one, that's more New England based, then maybe he takes that job instead. I think ultimately, too, at the end of the day, we know that not every successful college coach is successful at the NBA level. And I think when it comes to the Dan Hurley situation, we don't know how successful he'd be as an NBA coach. We know that he's one of the best college coaches, there is, probably the best one in the game right now currently. And, wouldn't he want to continue that string of success? And yes, he lost his big man in Donovan Clingan, who just got drafted, who I'm excited to see, perform in the NBA. And he lost a few other key players, but his returning players are still solid. And he's bringing in some really good recruits in the incoming freshman class to help with this UConn team. And I think him and his coaching staff really have built something special. And if he left to go to LA, I would have been worried that he brought his coaching staff with him. I think that definitely would have happened. I think, UConn athletics is throwing a party right now because they were like probably saying like, how much are we going to have to pay this guy to get him to stay if he has a chance to take a job with the Lakers? And now he decided to stay. And that's a huge game changer and completely changes the outlook of this UConn team for the upcoming season. Because if he had left, there would have been, I think, a lot of question marks surrounding what this UConn team was going to be and what they were going to look like from a coaching standpoint, and if they were going to be able to have the same level of dominance as they've shown the last couple seasons. And also, too, there could have been guys who entered the transfer portal if they weren't going to be playing under Hurley anymore. So that's something that could have been tough to experience, too, as a fan. So it definitely was a big sigh of relief, him coming back. And I think, for UConn fans, it's a huge win. And him having the chance to three-peat is really freaking cool.
Well, I'm glad he doesn't have to deal with LeBron walking off the court every time he loses. It's like,
Yeah.
I got a feeling it would piss off Coach Hurley very badly.
Oh, yeah. No, he would hate that, I think.
Yeah, LeBron doing that. The Lakers are down 20 points with 5 minutes left in the game. Having his little hissy fit. I mean, last I checked, a king doesn't leave his loyal subjects behind in battle.
That was a great impression.
I do not do that. Well, we lost. It's everybody's fault, even though I'm the leader.
It's everybody else's fault. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think that personality would not mesh well with Hurley. And I think Hurley's figured out the way he has to coach to be successful with these college guys. And he really is good at connecting with them and really truly being a coach and also a mentor, because he has given these guys a lot of advice when it comes to, should I stay? Should I enter the draft pool? Like, what should I do? And he's been great with giving these guys advice about, what the options should be and what's best for them at the time. And he has given guys the encouragement of, you should go enter the draft now because this is your opportunity. And I think it's great that he's honest with his guys, even though he's going to be losing them from his program. He cares about the well-being of these players and getting them to that next level. And I think if he went to the NBA now, he would miss that aspect of it, of being a mentor to these college guys who are trying to get to the next level. Whereas if he's coaching in the NBA, they're already at that level. So I think he likes being that guy who helps them get to the next level. So I think he's where he's supposed to be. And I think one day, if he does want to go to the NBA, I'm sure there will be another opportunity down the road. I just think it wasn't the right time yet for him.
Just don't go to the Nets as long as James Dolan is the
Oh, no,
owner.
please no. Well, I
Yeah.
would hate that too because I don't like
Don't
the Knicks.
don't let your wives and daughters near that. Don't leave them alone with that guy.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Like, do not put people in that situation. And I think, like, too, like, there are certain teams that I would just not be okay with him going to, the ones that I don't like. And so, because I know what kind of coach he is. So it would not be a great situation for me. Maybe eventually when Joe Mazzulla retires, Hurley will go to the Celtics. That would be my dream, but that would never happen because, Mazzulla is so young. So he'll be here for a long time. And I do like him as a coach too. But I think Hurley's perfect for UConn. I think, that's where he belongs right now. And I think the NBA and jumping to that level now was just going to be a little premature for him because he has unfinished business at UConn still.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets into the Hall of Fame sooner rather than later with the way he's led these young men on and off the court.
Oh, exactly. And even, during March Madness, I mean, they were dominating opponents. Like, like a lot of their games weren't even close. And it was like, you never really know what's going to happen in March Madness because it's so crazy. And, they have so many upsets and all these different things. But UConn went in as the number one overall seed and played consistently like the number one overall seed. And they just really looked like there were just no teams that were even close to being at their level. And that's pretty remarkable in itself, is just the way that they were absolutely mowing over their opponents during the tournament.
Oh yeah, because like I was sad that my Crimson Tide lost, but I was like, if it had to be to anybody, I'm cool with it being UConn.
Yeah,
I
because at
want,
least it's like a respectable, like, oh, UConn's really good and they're the one seed. So if anybody's going to beat us, like, we can, lose with dignity because it's to this very dominant UConn team. No, I
yeah,
get that.
yeah, because it's like I wouldn't want it to be like Tennessee and Rip Barnes because like I've talked so much crap about him in the offseason, and I'll probably say everybody say it was like, oh well, you win some, you lose some.
Yeah. No, exactly. I think, I'm definitely excited for the future for this UConn team and, what they can do next year. I think they just have a great group of guys over there. And I think the coaching staff has done a phenomenal job. So I'm just really happy that he's staying. Definitely lost a couple nights of sleep in those, late hours of wondering what he was going to do. So I'm just really relieved now that he decided not to take that offer. Especially because it's the Lakers. I mean, I'm a Celtics fan. Like, I hate the Lakers. Like, I don't want him to go there. So, like, that's why I was also relieved by it, too. Because I was like, he can't go to the team that I hate the most in the NBA out of anybody.
Well, and I noticed that the Celtics had a better tribute to Jerry West than the Lakers did.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy?
That's insane. It's
It's
like,
wrong. I think it's
are,
wrong, but
is Jeannie Buss seriously still that pissed at Jerry West? Are you serious? Like, put aside your feelings for a moment and think about the franchise
I
that your
kind of think
dad
so,
built.
too. I kind of think so, too, to be honest with you. And I think it was like a personal thing. And that's a really bad look.
It's terrible. It's like you're mad that they called you out for doing the mess around with the head coach. Like, you don't do that. You don't go screwing around with your
No,
coworkers. Or
no.
that's crapping where you eat. That's just a no.
Exactly. Yeah, that was really bad. And I was like, thinking about the whole situation, I was like, that was so underwhelming for the Lakers. Like, it was almost like disrespectful.
It's like the horrible era they've had in the final years of the Kobe era, and like that 1 year where they won it all, and they haven't really done anything in the past 10 years. I swear it's like karma.
Oh, it is. Yeah, no, it definitely is. And, I just root for the Lakers' failures consistently. So I'm very happy that they, needed a bubble season to win a championship. And they can't do that in a real season. And I think, there's just a lot of things coming for that franchise. And I think it's not good stuff. And I'm also interested in seeing, their situation with Redick and how he's gonna, coach that team because that's what threw me off about the Dan Hurley situation too. Was I thought before that they were committed to JJ Redick, and it seemed like they were going to offer him the job, and then all of a sudden this news drops that they were interviewing Hurley and they were interested in making him the head coach. And I was like, what happened with Redick? Like, I thought he was the choice. So that was all really confusing. But now Redick is the coach, and I'm interested in seeing how that situation goes for them. And I just hope for my own personal sanity that it just falls apart for them.
Well, I hope for JJ Redick's sake, LeGM doesn't fire him soon.
Well, yeah, well, that was the other thing too that I was worried about with Hurley was I was like, how long would he last with LeBron being on the team? Like, if he makes LeBron really mad, would he get him canned, as soon as he's there? So that was the other thing too. So I'm just relieved. It's just that organization is just too much. And I think it was a smart decision for Hurley to not go there.
Yeah. But we know a team that's going to be rebuilding, because we saw this team win quite a lot in the Tom Brady era from 2001 to 2019. And now in the last 4 years, we're meh with Bill Belichick. Now that Bill Belichick's not there, we got Jared Mayo as the Nets head coach. And the 2024 season, well, looks like nowhere to go but up. We see it starting off with Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Good grief.
Yeah. I think it'll be an interesting year for the Patriots. I mean, it's a completely new era now of Patriots football. I mean, we've gotten so used to the Belichick regime and kind of his system of how he wants things done. And, you know, he never ultimately, I don't think, wanted to see a rebuild through. So I think he kind of half committed to a rebuild, but didn't go all in on that. And I do feel like Mac Jones kind of got the shaft during his time with the Patriots because they never really put him in a position to succeed, having a different offensive coordinator every year, like having no consistency there and not really giving him weapons around him offensively to be able to put himself in place to succeed as a quarterback. And, his rookie season, they made the playoffs. And I think people sometimes do forget about that. And I think there was more potential there than what it seemed like. And I think it's because Belichick and the Patriots didn't really allow themselves to commit to that rebuild and put him in that spot to be able to succeed. Now, I'm not saying, Mac Jones was definitely our quarterback of the future. I mean, we won't really know. But I think, the fact that Belichick is gone was the only way for the Patriots to actually allow themselves to fully rebuild. Because Gerard Mayo, I mean, his first year as head coach, he's committed to building this Patriots team the way he wants it to be built and kind of establishing, a new definition of what the Patriots are. And I think he has the opportunity as being somebody who's been involved with the organization for so long and has seen just all of the highs and all of the lows that this Patriots organization has gone through with Brady and Belichick. He has the chance to put a new perspective on things. And I think if they really wanted to fully commit to this rebuild, it needed to happen for them to part ways with Belichick. And I'm excited to see what Mayo does. I think Drake May is somebody who is kind of getting a little bit of the short end of the stick already in terms of the fans and lack of trust. And I think it's because people are scarred from the Mac Jones situation. We knew they were going to take a quarterback with their pick in the draft this year. They had to, and I think, they have Jacoby Brissett, who's a great bridge guy who can help along the way this season because I don't think Drake May will start right away. I think he'll be on the bench and he'll learn under Brissett. And I think, this is a good opportunity for the Patriots to really build a team around him and utilize his strengths to allow him to succeed in the organization. And, defensively, the Patriots are probably going to be a competitive team. I mean, the defense kept them in a lot of games the last couple seasons. They just unfortunately couldn't score. So then they just weren't winning games that way. But Belichick just being a defensive minded guy always prioritize making the defense strong. And I see that being the same under Mayo. I think when you look at some of their matchups this year, they are in a tough division. And the other teams in the division are in a much better position than they are to succeed right now. And I think, it'll be interesting. The division matchups are always tough. They're always close games and they're competitive. So those should be fun. But, I mean, this Patriots team has some tough games this year. And I'm looking at somewhere in, maybe 5, 6, maybe wins this year, but I don't think that that would be too alarming just because of the fact that it's a brand new system and there's a lot of getting used to that people are going to have to do. And I think, if you want to commit to this rebuild, you have to do it the right way. And that means just really doing what they were doing in the off season of making sure they're securing the players that they see being cornerstone pieces for the rebuild. They focused on locking in some players that they could see being a part of that moving forward, and also just trying to figure out what their biggest needs are, moving forward. And I think it really does start with looking at your quarterback and seeing, how could we help him to succeed in our system? And at the beginning, there will be some bumps in the road, but I think the main issue that they had before was that Belichick knew he was probably going to be out the door relatively soon, had no desire to commit to a rebuild. He's just trying to chase that wins record right now and then retire, most likely. And so I think, having a younger, fresher head coach in there who understands the Patriots system but knows what went wrong with this organization lately can provide a really good perspective on how they should actually be rebuilding to provide sustained success later on. So it could be a tough season, I mean, for Patriots fans. And I think, the division that they're in doesn't help with that because they're just going to struggle, I feel like, against some of these more competitive teams. But if they struggle this year to win games, but we understand the direction that they're trying to go in, then I'll be okay with how this season goes if I know, like, hey, there's hope because they are trending in the right direction and they have an actual plan for how they're going to go about this rebuild. Because that was something the last few years that I didn't feel like they really had, especially from an offensive standpoint, was we're not really trying to rebuild this offense. They're just trying to throw together some guys and hope that Mac Jones can figure it out. And it wasn't necessarily fair to him. And so I think, now we're really in the sense of starting from scratch and hoping that, some of these guys can pan out and show their potential. And I think, rebuilds don't just happen overnight. And I think this is something that it's been so long for Patriots fans to have to be patient with just because we were so spoiled during the Tom Brady days that it's now like, yeah, this is a brand new Patriots team and it could look very different from what it has been before. And we just need to be willing to be patient with that rebuild. But I do trust Mayo and his ideas, and a lot of the players spoke highly of him when he was brought on as the head coach. And I think that's huge because a lot of the players seem to trust him. And if you have that trust, that means you're starting off on the right foot. So I think there's definitely some positives to take away here, but I'm not expecting them to win a lot of games this year. But, as long as we walk away from the season knowing they're heading in a positive direction and we see the potential for some of their cornerstone players. And I think that's a great place to be at the end of this season.
Well, and I will ask though, if the Patriots go 5-12, which you said you're not expecting a whole lot of wins, but if they go 5-12, but 8 of the 12 losses are one possession games, how will that make you feel exactly?
Yeah, I think that'd be super significant. I think that would be a very positive thing because that would show that they can compete in some of these games. And they did have a similar issue last year where they were playing close games against some of these teams. And, like, it wasn't easy wins for all of these teams to beat the Patriots last year. And I think that's a very significant thing, is what the final score ends up being, because even if they do lose 12 games, but they're close competitive losses, that shows that they're for sure heading in the right direction in terms of their ability to compete with other teams. And it's just a matter of, putting everything together and figuring out what else they still need to do to put themselves back in that contending category of teams. And I think, they are willing to do what it takes to get to that. And I think Mayo knew what the situation was going to be when he took the job. And I think he knows, there's a lot of work that needs to be done with this Patriots team. And I don't think he necessarily would have agreed to become the head coach if he wasn't willing and ready to commit to everything that entails. So I think that would be a very promising thing. That would give me a lot different outlook if they went 5-12, but these games that they lost were competitive, as opposed to if they went 5-12, but they got blown out in all of their losses. Then I think we'd have a lot more things to be concerned about.
Agreed. And I will tell you though, a sign that I noticed where the Matt Jones era was basically going to end very badly was 2022 when they talked about saying that, oh, Bailey Zapp, we're going to put you in for Monday Night Football. That told me right then there, okay, they're not doing Matt Jones any favors. And it was like you said, they didn't put any weapons on offense. I really hope they put some offense in New England for Drake May, because if they don't, it's going badly for him.
Yeah, and I did feel bad for Mac because there were people booing him all the time during the 2022 season and even into last year. And, it really did show me that the Patriots didn't care about investing in him long term. And I worried about this exact scenario when they drafted him because that pick, when they drafted Mac Jones, felt very forced. And it almost felt like because he was the quarterback who dropped to their pick and they knew they needed to get a quarterback, that's why they took him. But I don't know how high on him Belichick actually was. I don't think he was Belichick's top choice quarterback to take in that draft class. I just think because he was the one who fell in their laps and they knew they needed to take a quarterback in that draft, that's why Mac ended up here. And I just don't think the whole situation was fair to him. I hope he finds success moving forward for sure. And I just don't think the Patriots and where they were at was the best situation for him to be in. I'm glad he's getting another shot. And I think hopefully he gets treated better there. But I definitely did feel bad because a lot of the fans had given up on him. And when they decided to turn to their backup quarterback in Bailey Zappi, everybody was, thinking like, okay, like this is nice to be able to get him in. And I think it was almost a way of saying Belichick, like, oh, let's see how he does because we don't have any confidence in Mac anymore.
Well, I hope for yours and Mike Debate's sake that we don't see the Patriots go where the Bills were from 2000 to
Oh gosh.
2015.
I seriously hope not. That would be an absolute nightmare. I don't think they will. I think this coaching staff is truly committed to rebuilding and I think they know what that's going to entail. So I definitely have faith in them. I just think the fans are going to have to be okay with accepting a rebuild for what it is and being patient with the results.
That's all it takes, a little patience. Although for me, depending on what it is, I've not always been good with patience.
No, me either. Trust me. And I feel like, especially when it comes to sports teams and I get so frustrated, it can definitely be tough to watch some of these things unravel. But everybody's patience is definitely going to be put to the test here this upcoming football season. I'm pretty confident in that people are going to see some tough times this year, but tough times that, might pay dividends in the future.
Well, I will say 2024 and beyond hopefully can be better than the last 4 years for the Patriots.
Yes, you are absolutely preaching to the choir on that. I really hope so too. I think, hopefully this is a sign of new and better days for Patriots football and people can have something to be excited about and cheer for because New England/Boston based fans are very, very passionate and very, very intense and they want something to be happy about. So hopefully the Patriots can give them that at some point in the near future.
Well, I wish nothing but awesomeness for the Patriots. I wish nothing but awesomeness for the Celtics, Uconn Huskies for things to get better for them, and for the Red Sox for them to get healthy at the right time, which it looks like they are. And before we wrap this show up, we will be, for those who would like to tune in to Locked On Red Sox, a Boston Ballin podcast, and talk with you about the Patriots and the Bruins, even because especially those that are hockey experts, the Celtics, UConn, and the Red Sox. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so I am on all forms of social media. Locked On Red Sox, you can subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that be YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever your preference is to listen to any podcast. You can find Locked On Red Sox on those platforms Monday through Friday. Same with Boston Balling. You can also find that show on any podcast platforms. Once a week, I drop a new episode talking about something related to Boston sports, and it's such a chaotic time right now. now. So there will definitely be lots of conversation coming up soon to be had. So you can check out those 2 podcasts on any of those platforms. I personally also am on Twitter at Gabby Hurlbut 10. Locked on Red Sox on Twitter at LO_Red Sox, and Boston Balling on Twitter at Boston Balling. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Gabby_Hurlbut 10. Or you can have me on Facebook at Gabby Elizabeth, which I do run live streams of Boston Balling on that as well. And, I do have a TikTok account that I don't update as much as I should, but that is also Gabby_Hurlbut 10. And sometimes I do like to post segments of my shows on there. So if you want to check those out and see glimpses of some of the stuff I do, you can follow me there, or on Threads at Gabby_Hurlbut 10. I mean, I remember Threads was such this huge thing at the beginning when everybody was trying to, switch over to it from Twitter, and then it kind of fizzled out a little bit. But I am on all the platforms. My shows also are on those platforms. So you can find me really on social media or any podcast platform.
And you can also check me out on X at Jackson09960335, on Instagram and Threads at JacksonJohnson543908, where I give my updates on who's coming on the Jacksonian, and I just kind of run my mouth about what's going on in sports world, pop culture, and whatever else comes to mind. And you can also find me on Jackson Johnson 979 on YouTube, where I'm 152 subs away from the magic number 500. I'm looking to get there before August 24th. I can't get there without your help, everybody. And for those that tuned in, thank you for watching another great show. And y'all have a pleasant evening. Stay safe, stay cool, get in the pool, and put on some sunglasses. And enjoy this happy 4th of July and the 248th birthday of the United States of America.